sorry to interrupt you, but doesn't that goes against partnership? Because your partnership was to want to make alliances or partnership. Most of the time, they want to be exclusive.
It depends, again, it depends upon the stage, it depends upon the partner. But in general, we're saying that for an early stage business, finding an exclusive partner, like someone, and your answer is, do they want exclusivity? They'll almost always ask for it. Normally we don't give it, or it comes with a price. You know, you want, because we've done this before too. We would prefer a non-exclusive
Sales
arrangement.
quota, you may ask them for sales quota to be exclusive.
Absolutely. There's a lot of ways you can do this, and if this is relevant to the group, we can talk about, you can make performance measures that will give you exclusivity for this period of time based on you hitting these. So you must hit a minimum amount of sales of X. You must provide us with these kinds of resources and knowledge, market intelligence. And the minute they don't, the exclusivity. Sometimes when you're in development of a product, we've actually used exclusive partnerships because someone will help us develop the product and they'll actually pay to help us develop. And so what we'll do is we may give them a 1-year exclusivity in the market just to give them a head start. Much the way in the US Apple did with iPhone, where there was a carrier, AT&T, that had exclusivity with the iPhone for a period of, actually it was 2 years, in the market before any other carrier could carry the iPhone. So that sometimes worked. Believe it or not, it actually hurt Apple's sale. They needed to do it at the beginning, but it hurt them because the largest carrier in the US was Verizon, and because they were precluded, that allowed Google to come in the market with a lot of their Android-based products, which took a large chunk of the market share, and Android became the fastest growing platform. In fact, Android has outstripped the Apple OS as the preferred. And things like that could have been prevented, but at the time it was a necessary partnership. On the other hand, we say to avoid promiscuity. It's also not good to just partner with everybody, because that makes you less special. Just like in high school, the person who kind of dated everybody, or maybe slept around, was probably less special to the rest of everybody. Take for granted that everybody talks to everybody in your market, particularly in your industry. Information, if we're getting this kind of information using the web, you better believe people are connecting. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. Just assume that everyone's talking to everyone. Don't say, I'm going to tell you something and you can't tell another person. Just don't assume that that will ever work. And the best way to sell your product is have other people talk about it. That's why the use of social media, and again, we can do a session at some point on the whole use of social media, but reference selling is by far the best. And these new social media tools using blogs and using user groups and using what are called SIGs, strategic interest groups, or special interest groups, to drive the message are some of the best ways of marketing your product, because people who are in your peer groups are now referencing you. That's why TechCrunch is such a great way of selling. I'm not going to go to this because we talked about this yesterday. How many of you weren't in the session yesterday? Oh, so there were a number of you who were in session. Basically, building your company and taking it global is all about managing risk, and you have to know what those risks are. As a VC, we actually quantify these. When we actually were checking off our boxes for an investment, we look at each one of these and says, okay, what technology risk do we have? What other technologies are in the market that are going to displace us? They may be doing things a little bit differently, but they could still compete for our customers. They could compete for our manufacturers. They could compete for our talent. But what is the technology risk? And the rest are pretty self-explanatory. We have capital risk. It could be regulatory risk in some markets. We had a company recently that there was some regulatory risk that in the state of New York, they actually ended up outlawing a particular type of technology to be used in. There was a very well-known technology in the Silicon Valley that was now precluded out of the market, but in their budgets they were counting on that to happen. And so the role of the VC was to call his person in the mayor's office to get the mayor to interpret the law differently so that this product could be sold into the market. And So you have to think about all of these things. I think I talked about this yesterday. What do we have to confirm? What do you? But this is actually more for you now. This is what the entrepreneurs have to do. So you're going to go global. In fact, I don't think there's any other entrepreneurs from the last company we were talking to here. But this is what we were talking about: is that before you go into a new market, particularly one that you don't know about, you have to do your homework. And the thing is, what is the risk of going into this market? What do we know? What don't we know? And what is the risk of us not knowing certain things? And then how do you validate that? But you still have to take the risk. That's Wayne Gretzky. We're big on hockey. And kind of remember, but even in the US, we like our hockey players. But the bottom line is, you don't win if you don't play the game. So, how do you start? We've said this to a number of the entrepreneurs this week. You have to start with some market assessments. One of the things that I'm in favor of doing here in Palestine and DIE is somehow you can begin leveraging some of the business students at the universities. And for instance, some of the students working in Bizray who are learning business, get them involved to do some of the market research stuff. A couple of things. One is that it helps them learn and become the next generation of business support people here in the community and help create jobs. But very often students have access to databases that they don't have to pay for, that you as an individual in the private sector would have to pay for this market intelligence, certain kinds of reports. They can usually get it for free because a lot of these companies provide universities free access to these. You have access to world-class people, finance, all of that. You only have so much time. One of the things we want to understand is, will your business work in our lifetime? How long is it going to actually take for this business to work? And then how are we going to be able to assess the technology? From you as an entrepreneur, do you have to love what you're doing? So we call it the alpha factor. Do you really love this? You have to really like it. You can't do it just because, well, I need a job and it's going to pay the bills. And then we have a lot of very strange terms after the financial analysis. And for those of you who've gone to business school, you kind of learn all these things. Get someone else to do these things for you, and you can certainly learn. One of the courses that I think would be valuable for the DIE to help entrepreneurs with that we do is a course. It's we call it Financials for Non-Financial Executives. So for entrepreneurs who aren't going to be the financial people, what are some basic financial things that you need to know? You need to learn. How do you read a balance statement? All entrepreneurs have to know that. You just have to know that. Yeah.
A question for you. Do you have all these workshops in the e-learning platform?
Yeah.
You do? Part of the university or part of?
Part of Global Connect. And then, of course, we can possibly make those available.
Please.
We'll talk. We'll have my person call your person. But no. Again, you need to kind of learn all these things. You don't want to use these things as a crutch, but when you're in meetings with other people who begin talking about these things, there's nothing worse than kind of sitting there and going, I have no idea what they're talking about. And what we used to do, we do a lot of meetings with government people, and they love acronyms, those kind of three-letter things, and we're always trying to figure out what all these three-letter things mean, and they kind of throw them out, and then we end up making up weird stuff. So it's good to have a basic understanding.
What is EVA, by the way?
It's value add.
Estimated value add?
Huh?
One I've never heard of is Monte Carlo.
Monte Carlo simulations. Those are what-if scenarios.
Okay.
So when you kind of look at your financials, you're saying, so you start with saying, we think we're going to get 1% of this market, but what if we only get 0.5%? Or what if it's 3%? And so you run different.
Sensitivity analysis.
What?
Sensitivity analysis.
That is. And the reason they call it Monte Carlo, it's like going gambling and going, what if? What if? What if? So we're going to go. You got to do this. This stuff is, I know it's boring. It is so essential that you do this. You have to do this, but it's a thing that I know as an entrepreneur, particularly one with attention deficit. And I started 3 companies, and each one of them, when I get to this point, I'm like, oh, God, I don't want to do this. But the whole point The difference between business planning and business modeling, in business modeling, it's all about coming up with a set of hypotheses that you're going to test against the market. You want to take your product globally, or you want to take it into other markets. You may want to take it across the Middle East, into Jordan, into Saudi Arabia. And the first thing you have to do is you have to test your hypothesis. We think that this market is a good market. And you have to make some assumptions. So that's all hypotheses start with an assumption. We think that if we do X, then Y will happen. And then you have to test that. And that's really that's what business modeling is, and that's what all startups are. Every single one of you has done that, and every entrepreneur that I've met with over the last few days here, that's about what they're doing. They're saying, we have a product that we think is valuable, we think it's differentiated, we think people will buy it, and now we need to test that, test that assumption in the market. And the best metric of that test is that people write checks and say, we want this. Or, even earlier on, the people will agree to do a beta test with you, and even before that, the people will take a meeting with you. So there are certain signs that there's some acceptance. And then from that, you have to determine how viable your business can be, and then the more people you talk to, you're going to find out what the risks are in doing that. You have to understand, Phil said this, said this, Alan said this on our panels the other day. We have to understand the size of the market. Now, for those of you in disruptive areas, in areas that are creating the next Google, the market may not currently exist, and that's fine. But don't tell us that you're going to get 30% of, $1 billion market. It's fine to say the market doesn't exist yet, but this is why we think that this will be relevant. And if the logic and the assumptions we feel are hold up, we may be willing to take a ride with you to test those assumptions in the market. That's what happened with Twitter, that's what happened with Google, that's what's happened with Facebook. That people were willing to take assumptions. Now, a lot of you are addressing existing industries and existing types of business, or you're coming a little bit later into an existing industry, in which case you can test against the market that's already been established for what you do. The competitors, the customers, we've already talked about that probably ad nauseum. You don't need to hear that anymore. But said this again last night. You got customers. You have to know who your customer is and who you're selling to. And this can all be done as part of your research. Get out there and actually talk to them. And the other great thing about using students to do market research, anybody will talk to them. Sometimes if you're an entrepreneur, you kind of walk in and you may be a little older and you go to talk to people. People are at times a little less willing to talk to you. But everyone's willing to talk to a student, particularly if they're doing research. So it's like using children, to do things, and everyone wants to, no one will say no to a child.
But is it that trusted info?
Is it what?
The students, what they do, what they collect, do you think it is trusted up to 90% or so?
It depends what you're asking them to do. There's still some work that you're going to have to do, particularly some of the customer validation, but some of the information around it, particularly things that reside in databases and pull it in, and then it's up to you to determine that. So from my experience, we've had really good experiences with students and we've had really bad experiences with students. And we've tried to develop a process to where we can learn earlier on whether the students are the right people. So we can have them do a small project and get feedback, and we can say, yeah, they're on the right track. They're thorough, they're asking the right questions, and you can also help be a mentor for them, because it's one thing just to collect data, but part of collecting the right data is asking the right questions. And so you may have to help the students formulate what the right questions to ask are.